Let's take a look at the Future Investment Initiative Summit 2025 going on in Miami in the U.S. So this time, it's about the future of investment, investing for impact. These are the core areas that the summit will look at this year, and is also talking about investment amid geo-fragmentation. Yes, there are different economic blocks, and there are continental fragmentation. There are also things that threaten multilateralism. These are the issues that the Future Investment Initiative Summit will attend to. So as global leaders converge, the summit opened yesterday with the President of the U.S., President Donald Trump, giving an opening address. So as the summit opens with global leaders in attendance, all of this will be straightened out so that the world can have better cooperation that will help economies develop and will bring about more stability to global economy. Now, looking at investment in geo-fragmentation, a lot comes to mind. There are trade wars ongoing, particularly between the U.S. and China, the U.S. and Canada, the U.S. and Mexico, and maybe we can say not really between U.S. and Europe, but it could if Europe begins to make their own rules or guidelines, impose tariff on certain goods from the U.S. So then we can say there is tension trade-wise between the U.S. and America, between the U.S. and Europe. But for now, there is trade war ongoing between U.S. and China, U.S. and Mexico, U.S. and Canada. And then we're talking about the future of investment. How will these tensions affect investment, Doc?
Well, I think Donald Trump, on the very first day of office, had hit the ground running to set a new direction for the entire American society. And I think that is what is all about, the concern, the kind of ovation he received yesterday at Miami, coming back as one great investor who has invested hugely in real estate in Miami. But yesterday, the conversation was around what America was going to do with artificial intelligence, which is the new oil, so to speak, that the world is leveraging in. And if you had listened why his vice, J.D. Vance, spoke to the European gathering the other time, he also made this emphatically very clear what position Americans want to take. So the first executive order that Donald Trump signed when he came into office was to first of all suspend the Institute of AI Safety. And their policy is that we are not going to be talking about safety of AI. We should be talking about the opportunity that AI brings. So America is massively investing in opening up that space of artificial intelligence to govern the entire space. Because they know that, yes, people are afraid that AI is going to take away some human jobs. People are talking about the ethical use of AI and the rest of them. But for Donald Trump, it's not about control. That controlling AI is like deadening the imagination of people in that space, but rather government give them free hand to think and creatively and innovatively bring out solutions that can help solve human problem. And so when you are looking at investing or prioritizing humanity in Miami, what the president is saying, yes, AI is not necessarily a danger, but government also has to be part and parcel of it. And so he's talking about that happening. And of course, you also know what that impact that is going to have on the blockchain technology, which is also driven by artificial intelligence. And speaking of America also opening up for cryptocurrency and the rest of it. So the long and the short of the Donald Trump administration is to see how America become as relevant in the politics of the globe as they were yesterday. That America become a manufacturing hub again. That businesses are done in America. taxes are taken away so that those who want to do business can come to America and invest. He said something that jocularly yesterday, that if you want to invest $10,000 in $1 billion in American economy, that you can come to the White House. But if it's lesser than that, you may not come. So it tells you the kind of an open door that America is open for business. He wants people who have money everywhere in the world. Bring your money to America. We ensure that it's safe and secure, and you can do business here, and we'll give you the best of ecosystem to do that business.
Okay, so sometimes when I look at Donald Trump's body language and what some economic experts interpret what he's trying to adopt for America, there seems to be a little contradiction that I actually want to even redirect Doc's attention there. Now, if you look at America, he's deploying tariffs, he's deploying tax, putting America first. Now, people want to think that Mr. Donald Trump reducing tax,
yes, sir.
Deploying tariff. Yes. So people think. Some people say Donald Trump is moving towards mercantilism. Others will say, okay, some of the tools you use to promote mercantilism is also the same tools that you use for protectionism. And mercantilism wants to encourage export and limit import. But protectionism, okay, fine. The slight difference is that protectionism only wants to maximize export and completely shut out import. But if Donald Trump is doing that, that means he needs to liaise. If it is mercantilism, he needs to liaise with other countries from where he is going to be getting raw materials for the industries in the United States of America. But the heavy introduction of tariffs and sanctions coming from these countries that raw materials are going to be coming from the United States of America poses a different turn that might even affect trade relations and bilateral relations. So there's this contradiction in his body language, and people begin to be, in limbo of where he is actually heading.
I don't think there's so much of contradiction in what Donald Trump, a lot of people say, oh, he's anti-globalist. And he's emphasizing nationalism because he mentions American first. And I don't think that the policy that Donald Trump is pursuing is equal to the policy of isolationism, or what they call the moral doctrine in American foreign policy. But I think that what is up here is the fact that Americans are suffering. Unemployment figure in America is high. Inflation is high. And therefore, Donald Trump is wanting an America that recover or restore its past glory as the auto hub in the world. All the American auto industries are lying deserted. Because you're having auto coming from China, you're auto coming from Canada, auto coming from Europe. You call them energy saving auto. And that has destroyed the American internal market, so they're only consuming. So what he's emphasizing is that they don't want to be a consuming nation, they also want to be a selling nation. And that's why you hear him saying that Europe is talking about globalization, but they are protecting their environment from other people entering. He even made mention of some US companies that have been frustrated in Europe and they are heavily taxed. So he's saying, if you want a free environment, then create that environment where everybody is actually playing equal. I think that's what we need to take away from what Donald Trump is saying. He's the president of America, and he has his responsibility to first and foremost live for America. Yesterday, he was rolling out some data while speaking at Miami of some of the things that reason why he stopped USAID. That of course he said $20 million US. $20 to provide a condom for people in Nepal. And they say, what is condom? What does that mean? And so you can see the frivolity in how America is putting money here and there. And he feels that that's not what the country should be doing. Why the country itself is passing through a whole lot. People have talked about infrastructure decay in America that has not been attended to over the last 30 years. Roads are becoming dilapidated because America is so busy outside and not focusing on its internal affairs. And I don't think that is actually trying to separate America from other places. It's saying, look, you're using our market for cheap products, and then our factories are dying, so we're not going to allow cheap products in our market anymore. We want your product to be competitive with our own product, so our people can make choice. And I think that is what it is.
Okay, we have someone who is attending the FII Summit, that's the Future Investment Initiative Summit 2025, right there in Miami, Dr. Basham, and he's joined virtually this morning. Before we quickly connect Dr. Basham, let's take a listen to part of President Donald Trump's address at the Future Investment Initiative Summit yesterday, and then we'll bring in Dr. Basham.
And we put America first, and your country should put your country first. But in the end, we want America first. And when it's all beautiful, which it's going to be pretty soon, we want to help other countries, and you want to help other countries. But, you know, I tell your leaders, and some of the leaders are in this room right now, you got to put your country first. Whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's something else, you got to put your country first. But we're going to have plenty left over to help others also. As long as you invest in America, build in America, and hire in America, that means that I'm fighting for you. I am fighting very hard for you. Together we're going to make the United States of America bigger, better, bolder, richer, and greater than ever before. It's going to be stronger than ever before.
All right, that was President Donald Trump there speaking at the Future Investment Initiative Summit right there in Miami. Dr. Patrick Basham is Director, Democracy International, Washington, D.C., USA, and he's a delegate right there at the FII Summit 2025. Good morning, Dr. Basham. Great to see you again.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
I apologize that we had to get you up quite early. It's still very early right there in the U.S.
Yes, earlier than I thought it was, but I'm delighted to be back with you.
Thank you for making the sacrifice. So that was President Donald Trump right there making his opening address at the summit, talking about America. They're going to focus on America, and he says that there will be much left over for others later. But in the meantime, what do you think will happen to multilateralism even as the U.S. president is going strong on what a lot of people perceive as protectionism rather?
On the back foot, on the defensive. I wouldn't say on the way out, but certainly trending down. The notion of huge trading blocks being formed is something that's not necessarily of the past, but it's not of the immediate future. It's of the present, but not of the immediate future. Donald Trump is going to be looking to sign bilateral rather than multilateral trade deals, and so whether that is with countries in his own hemisphere, in the Western Hemisphere, or whether it's with European countries, the United Kingdom, for example, or with countries in the Middle East or in Africa. He's going to be looking for, from his point of view, win-win trade deals. They are part and parcel of his approach to international relations or foreign policy. That is, he views diplomacy and foreign policy and international relations the way he views economic policy and trade policy is transactional. And so if he thinks that a particular trade deal is a good deal for America, he will obviously promote it, push it. And if it also is a good deal for the party he's negotiating with, the country he's negotiating with, then all the better. But as he stressed in those remarks you clicked just before we began to speak, he views his role as first, second, and perhaps last to protect America first in economic terms, and he expects and encourages other countries to do the in terms of protecting their interests. So it's a very candid, a very honest, very realistic approach to trade policy. That doesn't mean, of course, that everyone is going to like it, because Donald Trump is always going to threaten to impose protectionist measures, tariffs, trade barriers of one form or another, penalties, whatever the case may be, or to renegotiate existing trade arrangements with America. He's going to start from a very draconian, very strong, even extreme position, because he intends not to stay there, but he intends to incentivize or disincentivize other countries from acting in a certain way. And he thinks that by talking tough and acting tough in terms of trade and threatening protectionism, that he can get a better deal for America. The proof obviously will be in the pudding, but that's his approach, and he's completely open and transparent about it. So there's nothing that should, at this point, going forward at least, surprise other countries in terms of their trade dealings with America. It's whether they are prepared to, as it were, go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and to act in a commensurate way regarding their own economic interests.
Congratulations, Dr. Basham, for a very well-deserved victory at the polls. We know that you made a lot of contribution to ensure that that victory came true. But looking at the policy that from all the executive orders seen so far, seems that America being isolated from the Committee of Nations. And people have argued that isolation of America from international politics led to both the First and the Second World War. Are you sure that this time around that the world will be really waiting to embrace Donald Trump as he's pursuing America for America?
Well, I think it's important to emphasize that while his critics at home and abroad will stress the I word, the isolationist word, what we found during his first term as president, and I think we'll find during his second term as president, is that he's not an isolationist, he's a non-interventionist. And there's an important difference. An isolationist is not sort of hiding from the world, as it were, pretending the rest of the world doesn't exist. Donald Trump very much is aware, the rest of the world exists and wants to interact with it. But he's not going to impose America on the rest of the world in a military sense, for example. He's not looking to interfere in what other countries are doing or not doing. He's not attempting to sort of poke around and try to recreate the rest of the world, either in America's image or in whatever ideal image he or others might have in mind. He's sort of taking the rest of the world as it is and attempting to act in what he thinks is America's best interest. And when it comes to the risk of war, for example, I think where we've been in recent times is truly at risk of World War III because of the continuing conflict in the Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia since the Russian invasion. And his predecessor as president, and certainly many of the contemporary European leaders who appear to be quite keen to risk World War III. What Donald Trump is exhibiting from day one is a desire to have as much peace in the world as possible and to reduce tensions. And Ukraine finding itself in this unwinnable war situation, having lost, a generation of young men, there's a possibility of that conflict, however unsatisfactorily, but realistically ending soon. And so that's, I think, a good illustration, a real-time demonstration of how his pro-peace, non-interventionist policy actually reduces the likelihood of global conflict rather than inflames it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basham, for that. Now, I want to turn your attention to Africa, and more specifically, Nigeria. It looks as if the Trump administration, in considering those who it intends to make a bilateral arrangement with, Africa is not in the picture, and Nigeria itself is not in the picture. Now, if I'm making a mistake by saying Nigeria is not in the picture, I needed to paint a picture of where Nigeria and Africa comes in and what sort of business interactions will ensue from that conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, you make a very valid point. I mean, during the first Trump term, the first Trump administration, Africa certainly was not first and foremost on the Trump administration's mind. I mean, most of his predecessors have put more emphasis on Africa, particularly in terms of aid and humanitarian elements of the relationship, as well as, depending on the administration, a certain amount of focus since 9/11, especially on the national security side of the relationship. With Donald Trump, it was, and it may be going forward, more of an ad hoc, less of a vision for American-African relations, and more a case of dealing with the issues or problems or challenges as they arise. I mean, rightly or wrongly, his focus is on North America, the Western Hemisphere, relations with, I think, the Middle East, particularly important relations with Asia, and Africa is, to be perfectly candid, not at the bottom of that list, but no more than perhaps in the middle with other one or two other parts of the world. So Donald Trump is going to be, when his attention is focused on Africa, is going to be looking for, as I was touching on earlier, looking for those transactional advantages. I mean, he's committed to making America energy independent in terms of oil and gas exploration, etc., and that may or may not have an impact or has the potential to influence relations with a country such as Nigeria. He's going to be looking for natural resource relationships, either deepening ones that exist or perhaps exploring new ones. And so, whether it's West Africa, Central Africa, there are opportunities perhaps there that haven't been, from the American point of view, fully leveraged or exploited, if I dare use that sort of heavily laden word. So I think in practice, on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be less a case of America being proactive and interventionist and assertive towards African countries such as Nigeria, and more a case of those individual countries, Nigeria probably being one of the best examples because of its disproportionate influence and weight in the African context. That a country like Nigeria making itself known to the Trump administration in terms of the challenges it's facing, the opportunities that are there for a stronger relationship. I say whether it's on economics or whether it's on national security, these are all things that will get their attention if the case is made. And so, just as Trump was saying that it's up to every country to be sort of their country first, and so if you're going to have, if there is a Nigeria first policy, then if the most accessible and relevant narrative is put on that Nigeria first message, as far as the American political class, and particularly the Trump administration, possible, then there is not necessarily no guarantee, but there is the possibility, even the probability, that they will get their attention and that they will recognize that there are opportunities, there are challenges, but there are also opportunities here that may not have been aware of. And so whether it's getting ahead of potential problems vis-a-vis Nigeria or Kenya or South Africa, or whether it's appreciating, either being reminded of or appreciating for the first time that there are opportunities for America that, fingers and toes crossed, will also benefit African country X or Y. That's, I think, the way to approach it. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be sort of sexy or exciting, but it's not going to be front page of the newspaper stuff. But it's sort of top of the X trending lines. But it can be productive and it can be successful for both countries. It's a new way of thinking about how to deal with America than I think a lot of African countries have been used to. But that doesn't mean because it's new and because it's less glamorous that it can't actually, in tangible rubber meets the road terms, not actually be productive and constructive. and a win-win for America and whichever African country we're referring to.
Basham, we're running out of time. Just want to find out, now talking about the non-interventionist posture of the Trump administration, are we expecting the AFRICOM to be defunded in days to come?
So did you say, should we expect defunding of Africa?
The Sahel to be defunded in days to come?
Well, in terms of funding, everything beyond the American sort of border is going to be taking a budgetary hit, I would imagine, such as the budgetary sort of nightmare that the Trump administration has inherited. And so there are going to be some worthwhile programs that will, at least in the short term, be frozen or eliminated, along with a great deal of unnecessary and unaffordable programs. I think the case will have to be made again, where there have been and are benefits to African countries from American aid. They will have to, on an individual basis, make that case again, and that perhaps is a good illustration of what I was saying just now, that African countries will need to remake the case that they've made previously, or make that case anew, because for this Trump administration, it's a blank slate, and they're not presuming or assuming too much about any of the programs, domestic or especially foreign. So there's an opportunity to make that case anew, but it will have to be made, because right now the default position of the Trump administration is to cut rather than to certainly to add and even to just maintain.
Let's look at even what you say the Trump administration is doing. Is not going to be interventionist, but we also know that there's a mix of geopolitics, even in the geo businesses or the business arrangements between different countries. Now, so when geopolitics is speaking, that also means the struggle of control of some other economies. While the U.S. may want Africa to negotiate some business investment or arrangements with the U.S., you understand that on the other side, we have the BRICS nation, which are moving very close to Africa. And there is the ongoing trade war, so it seems, between the U.S. and China, and the other BRIC nations coming close to Africa for investment. Now, we're talking about the Future Investment Initiative Summit, which has as part of its focus, investment for impact. Where does this leave the U.S. in all of this, as there is the continued struggle for Africa by the BRICS nation?
Yeah, you make an excellent point. I mean, America is not as in strong a position economically as she was, but she's still, although she's in a very preeminent position, it's not an infallible one, or one that allows her to ignore the concerns and the realities of, as you say, of geopolitics and of relationships between trading partners and other potential or actual trading partners. Right, so America's policies to reflect the fact that although she's in a stronger position than many of those that she's trading with, that they have options too. America has more options than most, but other countries do too. And obviously the rise of BRICS, the rise of the global South, obviously the Russias, the Indias, the Chinas, Saudi Arabias, in particular Brazil, these are the countries that are making or attempting to make the running with African nations in particular, in a way that Americans, either from a national security or an economic or both perspectives, have for some time viewed as either actually threatening or at least challenging, on an economic front. So this is where that narrative, that new message that African nations will need to present to the Trump administration, this is where it moves from being largely or exclusively defensive to actually one that is on the offensive, not to offend as literally, but on the offensive, where African nations can be more assertive than they may have been in the past, because America may be, in some ways, in certain contexts, the most attractive game in town, but she is not the only game in town for many African nations. And so the already existing relationships with the like of the Chinese and others, but particularly the Chinese, is something that is always gets American politicians' attention. But the Trump administration is, I would say, far more concerned about China vis-a-vis America than most of its predecessors have been, at least in terms of actual potential for action from an American point of view. So for African countries to play the China card and ask America whether they can get a better deal from her than they can from the Chinese is a card that is not necessarily one you want to play continuously, but one that you want to, have in your back pocket, because it could prove to be the pivotal card. It's sort of the Achilles heel of the American negotiators if they aren't aware, or if they don't think that you, as an African nation, are willing to, as it were, play hardball the way that America, and particularly a Trump-led trade negotiating team, will play. So it's a way. The rise of BRICS, the global South, is a way. I should say, the way it is developed. It is not leveled the playing field, but the playing field isn't as sloped in America's favor as it was, or some outside of the global South may think it is. So this is, an element of good news for African nations in dealing with America.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patrick Basham, Director, Democracy Institute, Washington, D.C., USA, for taking time away from your sleep to be part of the show today. We wish you a very great time at the Future Investment Initiative Summit 2025. We'll find another time to bring you on so we can talk more about the FII Summit 2025.
Thank you. It's been my great pleasure. Thank you so much.
I will just take two comments from Post and Perspectives. Apologies, we can't take much today. On the exit of on ECOWAS, which Niger has tightened travel for Nigerians, ECOWAS exit, we have Sani Abdulmalik saying Niger Republic and the other two countries abandoning their neighbors and putting a strict policy will not go down well in the long process. We wish them the very best. And I'm just going to take one on bullying. We talked about bullying. C. Governor says bullying should not be tolerated at all in our schools, family, and the workspace. We should speak up. The child or the adult should be able to tell his or her story. Well, next week, which will be Monday, we'll begin the show, 7 a.m. West African time, and then we will take all of the comments that you will send in as we discuss other issues to bring about change. I am Blessing Eichie. Thank you for watching today's show, and stay with Suk News TV from my co-host, Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze.
Nice weekend out there. See you on Monday.
Oyinpreye Krumale.
And I want to say to you, you do take care of yourself and watch over yourself. Make sure that you are a living, breathing, healthy person. Do have yourself a splendid weekend.